Good evening, everybody. I'm Cantor David Reinwald. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Temple Sinai. I would like to thank our partners at Violins of Hope, especially Lynn Zelensky, and my partners tonight in this program, Ellen Keeney on piano and David Levinson on violin, specifically on the Violin of Hope that is here with us tonight. As most of you have heard, our scholar and author, Dr. James Grimes, who was supposed to partner with me on this program, experienced a medical emergency in the past 2 months and was unable to join us tonight. However, he has graciously recorded a video for us in advance. So a little bit later into this program, you will hear his video, and which will introduce a couple of the pieces in the program. Hopefully you all picked up one of the printed programs. If you haven't, it will be important for you to have that, as most of the music tonight is not in English. The music you will hear is music that was written and performed in the ghettos and camps during the Holocaust, which is in German, Yiddish, Polish, and Turkish, and I think that's all the languages. It's a lot of languages. Dutch, there's also Dutch. The cabaret artist Max Garcia, who was a prisoner of Auschwitz, stated, "The resistance was there, the resistance was among the prisoners. The resistance was not just in the music, it was not in the joking, it was not just in anything else we did, it was in the refusal. It was in the refusal of becoming inhuman and to refuse them the chance of totally dehumanizing us, those who were still at that time surviving." I wanted to share a little bit of my story with this music because this music has lived within me for over 2 decades. And I wrote my master's thesis on music of the Holocaust, specifically cabaret music that was written in the ghettos and the camps and even in the streets. And I wrote a foreword in my thesis that is really my story that led me in this direction. I'll read it for you tonight because I think it sums up everything I could possibly say about it. In my initial pondering as to what I would research for my thesis, and the thesis is something I wrote at the time that I was becoming a cantor, I had thought about various avenues I could take and thought I might want to study something new, yet equal in value to my strong passion for music of the Holocaust. I had cultivated my love and interest in that genre already in my undergrad studies, where I had written extensively on the classical repertoire prominent in the Terezin ghetto. I thought that maybe now it would be great to round the corner and try something new. It seemed like I had already spent enough time with that genre and it was time to move on. Yet in April of 2004, I found myself on a trip to Washington, D.C., where my friend Rachel and I made a point to spend a decent amount of time at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. It was my first time visiting the museum, and there was a sense of homecoming for me, as I now was the final member of my family to finally pass through the doors of the museum and immerse myself into the richness of its exhibits. We entered the main exhibit, and not before long, Rachel and I had meandered apart, both of us emotionally swept away by the power of what was before us. I reached a certain point in the exhibit, and there before me, in an enclosed case, were the remnants of the actual hand-penned manuscripts of music written by composer Victor Ullmann, one of the handful of composers in Terezin who clearly grew in his artistry while a prisoner. My memories cycled back to when Rachel and I had taken a trip to Prague during our year in Israel, my first year of cantorial studies, and had spent a day outside of the city touring that ghetto of Terezin. It was a whirlwind day where I found myself constantly overwhelmed that I could be standing in the same place where such beautiful music was made alongside the most horrible of tragedies. Now, at the U.S. Holocaust Museum, I was just about to step through the open cattle car on display, and a grand epiphany swept over me. I knew I had to return to Holocaust music for my research. My passion implored me to unearth more about this music that should have lived a longer life. There is something about Holocaust music that is immensely powerful, and you will hear that tonight. For me, it is the fact that in its demise, the music fought back. And as I began to search for my specific thesis topic, I was incredibly drawn to the cabaret music of the genre, which by its very nature was saturated in political satire and a hopeful, while too realistic sarcasm. While the classical music that I had studied before had clearly fashioned its own bold existence, the cabaret music speaks of itself even more directly and in simple honesty. There is more elasticity embedded in the nature of cabaret, and it was a clear marker of the experience of its creators. For this reason alone, I think cabaret music is one of the most important examples of the combination of art and life under constant duress. The performers were able to respond through their art. How they did this was the secret of the music alone. The first song tonight comes from the Vilna ghetto. The song is called Frühling, which means springtime. The text is by a remarkable lyricist named Shmerka Kaczerginski. He was a true hero in his efforts to rescue and preserve hundreds of songs during the Holocaust, which eventually became his collection, Lieder von die Ghettos und Lagern, the songs of the ghettos and camps. Kaczerginski was a poet and ghetto partisan fighter in Vilna and the founder of the Paper Brigade, a group of artists, musicians, and writers who both hid and smuggled out books and music, many of which were found after the war. The efforts of the Paper Brigade saved works by Kaczerginski and many of his colleagues, but also by thousands of others. The composer of Frühling, Abraham Brudno, was a prominent cabaret composer in Vilna prior to the war, and this piece is written in a tango style, and sometimes people are surprised by that, but tango music was adapted from Yiddish theater that was present pre-World War II, when these performers would travel to South America to perform, and they were influenced by the music that they heard and ultimately embedded it within their own compositions. This is Frühling sung in Yiddish.
Ich plonge in Ghetto, von Gessel zu Gessel, und kenn nicht gefinnen kein Ort. Die Tor ist mein Lieber, wie trog men na Ribe, Menschen no so hot Schavot. Es leucht auf mein Heimat, der Himmel der Bläue, wo je hob ich jetzt davon. Ich steh wie ja Bettle bei jedwed in Teuer und bettel a bissel Sonn. Frühling, nimmst du mein Treue und bring mein Liebsten, mein Treuen zurück. Deine Fliegerbläue und nimm meine Herz mit und gib es auf mein Glied. Frühling auf deine Fliegerbläue und nimm mein Herz mit und gib es auf mein Glied. Geht zu der Arbeit vorbei, unser Stiebel in Treue der Teuer vermacht. Der Togatz erhellte, die Blumen verwelkte, Sevianen verseh ist euch Nacht. Vor Nacht euch zurückwächst es neue der Treue, o du liebster gewahrt. Und du in dem Schotten noch kennt ich dein Trottes, legst Küchen mit lieblich und zart. Frühling, nimmst du mein Treue und bring meine Liebsten, mein Treuen zurück. Frühling, auf deine Fliegerbläue und nimm mein Herz mit und gib es auf mein Glied. Frühling, auf deine Fliegerbläue Es ist heio der Frühling auf Rion gekommen, se blit hoch sich Wenschaft noch dir. Ich seh dich wie it's der Ballon mit Blumen, freudig gehst du zu mir. Die Sonne hat vergessen dem Garten mit Strahlen, selbst verschlot die Erde sich in Grün. Mein Treue, mein Liebster, wo bist du verfallen? Du gehst nicht heraus von mein Sinn. Frühling, nimmst du meine Treue und bring mein Liebsten, mein Treuen zurück. Frühling, auf deine Fliegenleue und nimm meine Hand mit und gib es auf mein Glied. Frühling, auf deine Fliegenleue und nimm meine Hand mit und gib es auf mein Glied.
We will now travel to the Westerbork transit camp, which is just outside of Amsterdam. This song is a duet by two young songwriters, Johnny and Jones, who were known by their stage name, Two Kids and a Guitar. Their actual names were respectively Max Kannenwasser and Noel van Wezel. The young Dutch duo were immensely popular in the Netherlands prior to the war. At Westerbork, Johnny and Jones were only able to perform in the barracks as there was a bias toward German cabaret performers by the camp's commandant. In the spring of 1944, while being sent to work days in Amsterdam, they were able to record this song, Die Westerbork Serenade, at the local radio station. At this time, both were offered asylum to go into hiding, but refused either because their wives were not with them or because they did not understand the magnitude of their fate. With the end of the war on the near horizon, both had survived transport to Terezin and Auschwitz, but perished in Bergen-Belsen in April of 1945. What you will hear tonight, this is the actual archival recording of them that they recorded at the radio station.
Geloof, ik ben niet helemaal in orde. Ben met mijn gedachten er niet bij. Opeens ben ik een ander mens geworden. Mijn hart klopt als de vliegtuigsloperij. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Langs het sporenbaantje schijnt het zilvermaantje op de heide. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Met een schöne dame wandelen tezamen zij aan zijde. En mijn hart brandt als de ketel in het ketelhuis. Zo had ik het ooit te pakken bij mijn moeder thuis. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Tussen de barakken kreeg ik het te pakken op de hei. Deze Westerbork lieberij. Daarna ging ik naar de sanitator. Die vent zei, er is heus niets aan te doen. Maar je voelt je heel wat stukken beter. Na het geven van de allereerste zoen, en dat moet je niet doen. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Langs het spoorwegbaantje schijnt het zilvermaantje op de heide. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Met een schöne dame wandelen tezamen zij aan zijde. En mijn hart brandt als de ketel in het ketelhuis. Zo had ik het nooit te pakken bij mijn mami thuis. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Tussen de barakken kreeg ik het te pakken op de hei. Deze Westerbork liefelei. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Langs het spoorwegbaantje schijnt een zilvermaantje op de heide. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Met een schöne dame wandelen tezamen zij aan zijde. La da da di, la da da da, la da da do, la da da dom, bom, 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 bom. Ra da 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 jom, da 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 ja, la da da ja, la la. Ik zing mijn Westerbork serenade. Tussen de barakken kreeg ik haar te pakken op de hei. Deze Westerbork liefde.
As we turn toward two other songs that fall into the category, the broader spectrum of songs that carry this message of hope, we will now move to this pre-recorded video from Dr. James Grimes, followed by these two songs that will be performed by Ellen and David.
Good evening. I regret that a medical crisis has prevented me from joining you in person, but I'm grateful and honored by the opportunity to speak to you via pre-recorded video about two of the pieces you will hear this evening. Shortly after Nazi Germany annexed Austria on March 11, 1938, Viennese butcher and amateur violinist Erich Weininger was arrested, beaten, and thrown on a train to the Dachau concentration camp. Although the prisoners in Dachau were closely watched most of the time, the guards often left them unsupervised on Sundays. Some took advantage of their free time to socialize with other captives or to read newspapers. Composer Herbert Zipper did something quite extraordinary. He formed a clandestine orchestra, one in which Erich Weininger played. Zipper's 14-piece orchestra performed in the latrine building that was still under construction. Their repertoire consisted of well-known classical works, as well as music that Zipper composed in his head each week during forced labor. He wrote out the pieces late at night, when he was supposed to be cleaning toilets. Zipper notated the music on strips of paper that fellow prisoners would tear from the margins of Nazi newspapers and painstakingly paste together. There was only room in the unfinished latrine building for 20 to 30 people at a time, so the orchestra played in shifts of 15 minutes to allow as many audience members as possible to rotate through the performances. The prisoners filled in quietly and remained in conspiratorial and awed silence throughout the brief concerts. In a tightly controlled concentration camp like Dachau, where such pursuits were strictly forbidden, the musicians and their audience members risked torture or even death for participating in these unsanctioned concerts. In addition to providing a source of emotional comfort for the detainees, the music served as an inspirational reminder of the humanity that Dachau had taken from them. When they listened to the music, they were no longer weak, demoralized, and humiliated. They were dignified and strong, united in their spiritual resistance to Nazi persecution. If only for 15 minutes a week, they were surrounded not by the ugliness of the concentration camp, but by the beauty of music. Erich Weininger survived the Holocaust and died in 1988 at the age of 76. The violin that he played in Dachau was passed down to his children. It stayed with them until 2012, when they started considering selling it. Weininger's son Zeev took the violin to Tel Aviv to see how much the instrument was worth. He quickly learned that the best place to take it for an appraisal was the workshop of Amnon and Avshalom Weinstein. The violin was damaged and had little monetary value, but Amnon and Avshi immediately recognized the instrument's historical significance. They agreed to restore the violin for free. All they asked in return was permission to maintain Erich Weininger's violin as one of the Violins of Hope. That violin is currently on display in the Posner Center at Carnegie Mellon University. In addition to secret ensembles, such as the one in which Erich Weininger played in Dachau in 1938, official orchestras had been performing in German concentration camps since 1933. Auschwitz was home to a number of ensembles, including a large orchestra in the Auschwitz main camp, orchestras in the men's and women's camps of Birkenau, and several other ensembles throughout the Auschwitz complex. These orchestras were composed of musicians who were recruited from the prisoner population. In the Auschwitz main camp, all detainees who are identified as musicians and who passed an audition were assigned to the Gate Orchestra. The orchestra's main responsibility was to play marches at the camp gate to provide a cheerful facade and rhythmic orderliness as the work details marched out of camp and returned every day. The ensemble also performed during executions, roll calls, and official visits by luminaries ranging from SS Commander Heinrich Himmler to a delegation of the Red Cross. The top 80 musicians from the Gate Orchestra also played in a symphony orchestra that gave concerts on Sunday afternoons and holidays for the SS officers and guards, as well as for their fellow prisoners. For Camp Commandant Rudolf Höss, the performances provided regular opportunities to present himself to his visitors and family members as a cultured patron of the arts. For Höss's subordinates, the concerts lent a sense of normalcy, decency, and even nobility to working in the camp. For the members of the orchestra, the events offered opportunities to earn food and cigarettes from their captors. And for the detainees who attended the symphony orchestra's performances, the music provided a mental escape from the harsh realities of life in Auschwitz. As one of the prisoners would say, the Germans put barbed wire all around the camp so that no one will escape. But I just close my eyes and I'm on the other side of the wires. They have no idea that we're all fugitives. Some of the musicians who played in the Auschwitz orchestras continued to make music after the Holocaust, but many never played again. Survivor's guilt combined with deep regret over having been forced to exploit their art to save their lives rendered making music too painful. One former Auschwitz musician sold his instrument to Holocaust survivor Abraham Davidovitz, who was assisting other Holocaust refugees with the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. An impoverished survivor told Abraham that he had played in an orchestra in the concentration camp, and that the violin had saved his life. Now he wanted to sell the violin. He needed the money and had no interest in ever playing the instrument again. Abraham, who had already been thinking about encouraging his young son Freddie to play, purchased the violin for $50, a respectable amount of money at that time. Abraham immigrated to Israel in 1949 with his wife and children. They brought with them the violin, which Freddie had already stopped playing. By 2009, it was time to do something with the instrument, which had been neglected for 65 years. Abraham's children refused to sell it, insisting, "For us, this is a memory of our parents and a memory of all the Holocaust." The Davidovich brothers considered donating the instrument to Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Authority, but ultimately decided that it belonged not in a museum, but on the stage. They brought the instrument to Amnon and Avshi for restoration and donated it to the Violins of Hope project so it could be played all over the world in the memory of everyone who survived during the Holocaust. As Freddie explained to me, it will go on playing after me, and I hope, for many generations. The Auschwitz violin has been played all over Pittsburgh. Its part has been played by the Edgewood and Wheeling orchestras and by musicians from the Pittsburgh Symphony. It has been in schools and youth orchestras. Last week, it was highlighted in a Kristallnacht Remembrance program. The two pieces you're about to hear have connections to Erich Weininger's violin and the Auschwitz violin. The first is a composition that Herbert Zipper wrote in Dachau titled Dachau Song. The lyrics were penned by the political journalist and cabaret playwright Ura Soifer, who arrived in Dachau in June of 1938, just a few weeks after Weininger and Zipper. The three artists were transferred to Buchenwald on the same day that September. Weininger and Zipper survived the Holocaust, but Ura Soifer died of typhus in Buchenwald. Inspired by the infamous "Work Makes You Free" sign that welcomed the prisoners back to camp every day after 12 hours of hard labor, the Dachau song sarcastically encouraged them to be a man, stay humane, and work as hard as you can, regardless of the harsh realities of camp life. The prisoners immediately embraced the song's message of defiant perseverance, and the Dachau song quickly spread to other concentration camps. The Nazi guards, either ignorant of or unconcerned with the subversive nature of the text, enjoyed the song for its uniform, march-like rhythms. The second piece is a lullaby by composer Gideon Klein. The melody was composed before the Holocaust by Rabbi Shalom Karitanov, but while he was imprisoned in the Theresienstadt ghetto, Klein arranged it as a lullaby for voice and piano, with new lyrics by the Zionist writer Emanuel Hurasi. The first two stanzas read, "Lie down, my son, lie down restfully. Do not cry bitterly. Your mother is sitting next to you, guarding against any evil. The jackal wails outside in the forest, and the wind is blowing there. But you cry no more. Lie down, my son, lie down restfully. Sleep, lie down and slumber." On October 16, 1944, Klein was deported to Auschwitz. He died there, shortly before the camp was liberated. May his memory, as well as the memories of all who suffered, be for a blessing.
Thank Cantor Reinwald. And can you hear me now? Is that any better? Well, I will speak loudly. I want to thank Cantor Reinwald and the ladies of Violins of Hope for inviting me to speak. And I'm playing this in honor of all those musicians who can't speak anymore of their experience. And perhaps we'll share just a tiny bit of that experience for them. and this is the lullaby.
Thank you so much, David and Ellen. We will stay in this location of the Terezin ghetto as we move to an example of one of the cabaret pieces that you'll hear is very much in jazz style. This song, Carousel, or Carousel, is an allegory to the lives of the ghetto prisoners circling round and round in a methodical and repetitive way. The melody you'll hear will shift in the middle of the song twice to a melody of an old kind of carousel-like melody, a waltz, reminiscing to visiting the Viennese amusement park called Der Prater, which still exists today in the center of the city. This song was written by the leader of the jazz band there. It was known as the Jazz Swingers, named Martin Roman. Martin Roman was a talented jazz pianist and arranger in Berlin before the war, who was transferred to Terezin from Westerbork. Upon arrival, Roman became the leader of the already established Ghetto Swingers ensemble, which included many fine musicians, including clarinetist Fritz Weiss, trumpeter Eric Vogel, and guitar player turned percussionist Coco Schumann. Roman arranged the whole of Guéron's, Kurt Guéron, I'll talk about in just a moment, Carousel, his cabaret play, and his music appeared as part of the soundtrack of the propaganda movie made by the Nazis. He survived the war and emigrated to the US, where he died in Emerson, New Jersey. Kurt Guéron, who was born in 1897, was one of the greatest cabaret stars of both stage and screen. He had an inimitable stage presence and speech-like singing style. He created the role of Tiger Brown in the premiere of Kurt Weill's Die Drei Groschen Oper, better known as the Threepenny Opera, and was the first to ever sing Die Moritat von Mackie Messer, better known as a song you all know, Mac the Knife. After his appearance in the movie Die Blaue Angel, The Blue Angel, Guéron was a bona fide star. Guéron then started a new career in the 1930s as a film director living in Paris, while his other contemporaries were making moves to Hollywood, including many stars that became popular here. He was equally as successful doing this until in 1935, when he was thrown off one of his own sets and replaced by an Aryan director. Guéron was contacted for a second time with an offer to move to the US, this time to be part of an American remake of the Threepenny Opera. Guéron rejected this offer when he was not offered first-class transportation and moved to Amsterdam, trying to relaunch his career but had little success. A bit too late, he sent a desperate plea letter to Hollywood, which was then returned in the negative. At the start of the war, Guéron was transported to Westerbork, but because of the reviews that were run and performed mainly by Willy Rosen and Max Ehrlich, Guéron participated only infrequently. Those were two of the popular Viennese cabaret directors. Yet upon arrival at Terezin in February of 1944, Guéron immediately became very active in the cultural scene. Guéron put together his own cabaret, Carousel, and in the late summer of 1944, he was requested by the Nazis to direct what would become a propaganda film showing the ghetto as a normal place where its quote-unquote residents were treated incredibly well. The film was known as The Fuhrer Gives a Town to the Jews and was never shown in public. Today, only sections of it still exist. A promise was broken when Guéron was transported to Auschwitz on October 28, 1945. Guéron begged the commandant of Terezin to no avail, noting that he was the one who made the film. Kurt Guéron was murdered immediately upon arrival at Auschwitz the next day. It is said that he was made to sing Mac the Knife while marching to the gas chambers. The very next day, the gas chambers were closed forever.
In den langen schwundenen Jahren, da wir kleine Kinder waren, hatten wir ein Ideal. Wollt man Ruhe in der Wohnung, oder gab es als Belohnung ein Geschenk nach unserer Wahl? Riefen alle Kinder schnell, Karussell, ach bitte, bitte Karussell. Wir reiten auf hützigen Pferden und werden im Kreise gedreht. Wir sehnen uns schwindelig zu werden, bevor noch das Ringerspiel steht. Das ist eine seltsame Reise, das ist eine Fahrt ohne Ziel. Wir kommen nicht fort aus dem Kreise und dennoch erleben wir viel. Und die Musik vom Leierkasten vergessen wir im Leben nie, wenn auch die Bilder längst schon verblassten, tönt noch im Ohr die Melodie. Wir reiten auf hützigen Pferden und werden im Kreise gedreht. Wenn schwindelig wir Halt machen werden, dann wird man es sehen, wo man steht. Menschen haben Ambitionen, selbst wenn sie in Ellen wohnen, wollen sie und Besseres sein. Hat auch keiner was zu reden, ist doch ein Genuss für jeden, mit noch Armeren zu schreien. Hört ihr das Gespensterlied? Unterschied, ach bitte, bitte Unterschied. Wir reiten auf hütenden Pferden und werden im Kreise gedreht. Wir sehnen uns schwindelig zu werden, bevor noch das Ringelspiel steht. Das ist eine seltsame Reise, das ist eine Fahrt ohne Ziel. Wir kommen nicht fort aus dem Kreise und dennoch erleben wir viel. Und die Musik vom Leierkasten vergessen wir im Leben nie. Wenn auch die Bilder längst schon verblassten, tönt noch im Ohr die Melodie. Wir reiten auf hütenden Pferden und werden im Kreise gedreht. Wenn schwindelig wir Halt machen werden, dann wird man es sehen, wo man steht.
We are going to move to the Lodz Ghetto, or as pronounced in Polish, the Łódź Ghetto. These songs are in Yiddish and represent a singer and songwriter who found himself performing on the corners of the street, often standing on a milk crate. His name was Yankele Hershkovitz, and he's a somewhat mysterious figure in the history of the Łódź Ghetto. While almost every survivor interviewed by ethnomusicologist Gila Flam for her book Singing for Survival recalled the street singer and his songs, the facts as to just who Yankele was remain unconfirmed. And he had many songs which provided almost instantaneous commentary on life in the ghetto. Many were reconstructed through this process of interviewing by recording survivors singing what they remembered and then finding a common denominator amongst these memories. It is known that Hershkovitz was a tailor from the town of Balut, Poland. He became known as the Klein Yidela, the little Jew, once he began his street singing in the ghetto. Through Flam's work, dozens of Hershkovitz's songs have been preserved, and in the early 2000s were reimagined by the klezmer group Brave Old World on their recording Dus Gesang von Ghetto Łódź, Song of the Łódź Ghetto. Though only hearsay, it is believed that Yankele did survive the war and remained in Poland until he committed suicide in the 1970s. I'm going to share with you just two of his songs. The first is the most famous of the songs and the most remembered amongst the survivors. It is called Rumkowski Chaim, and this song was a tongue-in-cheek ode to the ghetto's chairman, Chaim Rumkowski. But it creates an extended metaphor on his name. And Chaim Rumkowski was not liked amongst those in the ghetto, unfortunately because of the hard decisions he had to make on behalf of the community that were only sparked by the Nazis making him do those things. So he was placed in a very difficult situation. And this is that song.
Jedelech seinen gewünscht mit Chaim, Chaim lehoile Muves, Chaim fin Beis HaChaim, Rumkowski Chaim mit sein größten Nes. Macht dich nicht moi, in Tug azoi, gewalt sich rein, hoi, hoi, hoi. Jeder eine fragt, das zweite Scheile, hoi, sucht Chaim, sit geht azoi. Weil in ser Chaim, geht ins Klein, geht ins Groben, geht ins Mann. Versat ins Hoben, hier in den Midberg gegessen, Mann. Heint es schon jede Weibermann. Rumkowski Chaim hat geht getragt, gearbeitet schwer bei Tug bei Nacht, gemacht a Ghetto, in a Dietto, in er schreit Gewalt, das ist geracht. In a Zimmertug gewesen is a Tuga heißer, geht Rumkowski in der Gas, seht durch euch wie a Kaiser. A helle Ganzug in tinkele Brillen, Polizei a ihm bewagt. Ich such eich Guer, in der Kaiser holt Gruhe Huer. Leben soll ganze 100 Jahre. Weil es in der Chaim, geht ins Klein, geht ins Groben, geht ins Mann. Wat Satans hoben jeden Milbe gegessen, Mann. Heint es schon jede Weibermann. Rumkowski Chaim hat geht getragt, gearbeitet schwer bei Tug bei Nacht, gemacht a Ghetto, in a Dietto, in a schreit Gewalt, das ist geracht.